You'll be the cutest one in the room with this ruffle sleeve top. The cotton fabric is everything with these embroidered daisies. It's available in beige or black, and I'll link it below. The pattern is very similar to the Simplicity 8602 sew-along I posted recently, except this pattern is free. It's the Sky Top from Tiana's Closet, and it features gathered sleeves, side seam slits, and back ties, so no zippers or buttons with this one. I'm using my regular sewing machine for this entire project and finishing my seam edges with my overcast foot and overcast stitch. When I finished sewing it up, I gave it a nice final press with my standing steamer, the perfect alternative to ironing. I'll link it in the description. Get ready to sew your new favorite top. Let's get started. Here's my sleeve ruffle piece, and I'm going to baste along the top edge with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance from one side all the way across to the other using the longest stitch on my machine. I'm also going to leave thread tails on both ends so that I have threads to pull for gathering. Now I'll place the basted ruffle right sides together with the bottom of the sleeve, matching the centers, and pin in place. Then I'll gather the ruffle from both sides so that the ruffle fits the bottom of the sleeve. Once it fits and the gathers are distributed evenly, pin in place all the way across. Sew the ruffle to the sleeve with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and then finish the raw edges together. To prepare for hemming the sleeve at a later point, I've gone ahead and pre-pressed that raw edge to the wrong side by 5/8 of an inch all the way across the bottom of the ruffle. Now I'm going to fold my sleeve in half, right sides together, and pin the underarm seam. I'll sew the underarm seam with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and finish the raw edges together. Now that the underarm seam is sewn, I'm going to create a rolled hem along the bottom of the ruffle. I'm going to fold the raw edge to the pre-pressed line, and then on the crease, and pin all the way around. Then edge stitch close to that inner fold all the way around, doing this for both sleeves. Place your front and back pieces right sides together and pin the shoulder seams. Sew the shoulders with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and then finish your raw edges. For the side seams, I'm going to finish the raw edges for the front and back pieces separately, starting from the underarm and ending right at the point where the side seam juts out at the bottom. Doing this for both front and back pieces on both side seams. Now that all of those side edges are finished, I'll pin from the underarm to the top of that slit, doing this on both sides. Sew both side seams from the underarm to the top of the slit with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, backstitching at both points to secure. Once that's sewn, I'll press the entire side seam open from top to bottom. Now for each of those side seams, press the raw edge to the crease that you pressed with your iron so that the raw edge is now concealed, and pin in place. Now we're going to edge stitch close to that fold, then stitch horizontally across the top of the slit and edge stitch back down the other side of the slit. Do this for both side seams. Apply interfacing to the wrong sides of each of your neckline facing pieces, then place them right sides together and pin. Sew with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and press the seams open. Once the shoulder seams are sewn, finish the raw edges all the way around the outer edge in your preferred method. Here is the neckline of the bodice opened out at the shoulder seams. I'm going to place my facing right sides together with the neckline, matching the shoulder seams and the raw back edges, and pin in place. Then sew the facing to the neckline with a 3/8 inch seam allowance from center back all the way around to center back. Now that the neckline facing is attached, I'm going to clip into the curves all the way around, careful not to clip through the stitching line. Then we're going to understitch the facing. Turn the facing over the seam allowance and sew the facing to its seam allowance all the way from center back to center back. You're using about 1/8 of an inch seam allowance here. And then you can press that facing to the inside of the neckline. A tailor's ham is a nice tool to have to get a nice press around that neckline, as it lifts that curve edge off of the pressing table so you get a nice natural curve there. I'll link this pressing ham in the description below. Now for each of the shoulder seams, I'm going to place my needle inside the shoulder seam to stitch in the ditch, making sure that the seam of the bodice and the seam of the facing are perfectly aligned, and then stitch in the ditch as far as the facing. Do this for both shoulder seams. To prepare for setting in the sleeve, we're going to sew basting stitches all along the top of the sleeve, from outer notch to outer notch, using the longest stitch on your machine and leaving thread tails on both ends so that you have threads to pull for easing. Now to set in our sleeves, place your sleeve right sides together with its corresponding armhole and pin together at the underarm. Also pin the notch at the top of your sleeve with your shoulder seam. Then you can pull your basting stitches on either side of the top of the sleeve so that the sleeve fits perfectly into the armhole. Once it's eased on both sides, pin in place. Sew the sleeve into the armhole with a 3/8 inch seam allowance, finish the raw edges together, and repeat for both sleeves. Here is one of my center back pieces, and I'm going to finish the raw edges separately for both center backs. As I finish those edges, I will be sewing the facing and the garment together. So I'll start at the top of the neckline and continue those finishing stitches all the way to the bottom of the garment. Place your back pieces right sides together, and we're going to pin from the lower notch marked from the pattern piece to the bottom of the garment. Sew from the lower notch to the bottom of the garment with a 3/8 inch seam allowance and backstitch at both ends to secure. Press the entire seam open, including the top slit area. And for both sides of this back slit, we're going to edge stitch close to our finishing stitches down one side, stitching horizontally to get to the other side, and then stitch back up those finishing stitches, backstitching at both top edges to secure. For each of the tie pieces, I'm going to fold them in half, wrong sides together. And then once I have that crease down the middle, I'm going to fold each of the raw edges to meet the crease. Press those edges in place and then fold it in half once more to create a thin strap with the raw edges enclosed. For one of the short edges, I'll open out those creases and fold that short edge to the wrong side by about 1/4 of an inch, and then refold all of those creases and press that in place. Now I'll sew from those open folded edges, from the raw end to that folded finished end, edge stitching close to that outer fold. Do this for all 4 straps. Now I'll take the raw edge of the strap and line it up with the topmost edge of the center back so that all of that tie material faces the inside of the garment, and pin in place along the outer edge. And I'll do this at both sides of the center back. Then I'll take the 2 remaining ties, again placing the raw edge at the uppermost notch transferred from the pattern piece. Again placing the tie end on the inside of the garment to face the wrong side, aligning the raw edge with the finished edge of the back slit and pinning in place. And doing that on both sides. Now I'll sew each tie in place, sewing right on top of the top stitching that I sewed to finish the slit edges. Now that each tie is secured in place, I'll fold the tie over the stitches that we just sewed so that the loose edges are now oriented away from the garment. And I'll top stitch the tie in place, edge stitching close to those center back edges, doing this to secure each tie. Now the back tie closure is complete. We're ready to hem the bottom of the garment. I'm going to hem those bottom raw edges in the same way as I hemmed the bottom of the ruffles. I've pressed the raw edges to the wrong side by 5/8 of an inch. Then I'll take the raw edge and fold it to the crease, then fold it on the crease and pin all the way across. Doing this from slit to slit for both the front and back piece. Then I'll edge stitch close to the inner fold all the way across from slit to slit for both the front and the back. And now the top is complete. So here's the final result. I sewed the size extra small with no adjustments. Thank you so much for watching this sew along. Make sure you subscribe to the channel for more full-length sewing tutorials, and I'll see you in the next video.